Hi everyone, and welcome to the Hub and Spoken Special, a 6-part series where we have curated some of the awesome discussions we've had over the last 100 episodes. As data and analytics is really in its infancy, and so many people are trying to find their way still, we've always aimed to create a platform for us and our guests to open up and share real-life stories about delivering value from data, have frank and honest discussion about what works and what doesn't, and represent what we at Cynozure and the CDO Hub see as vital topics for organizations to engage in. So this special series celebrates and showcases those discussions, the amazing guests we've had, and the brilliant content we've shared. Each of the 6 episodes in this series focuses on a specific topic: data strategy or data management, business value, data platforms, data leadership, and finally, leading with purpose. It was incredibly hard to decide what to include from previous episodes, as there's been so many amazing things said by so many people. We hope, though, that we've represented this topic well and that it resonates with you all. This is part 4 of the series, how technology is your enabler to building adaptable data platforms and products. This episode looks back at the conversations I've had with business, technology, and industry leaders about not technology itself, but technology in action. The considerations to allow your technology to sing and provide the magic that it really can. We look at artificial intelligence, the use and deployment of data products, how data platforms are integrated into a data strategy, and the human factors that we need to consider. Intro to clip 1, episode 57, Ranil Bothaju. First up is my conversation with Ranil Bothaju, who at the time was the global head of data and analytics at HSBC, and now the group chief data and analytics officer at Lloyds Banking Group. We talked about the need to build and nurture data products as a way of more quickly delivering value from technology. What's driven the need to do this at HSBC and in the financial services market as a whole, and the considerations for moving out of proof of concept and delivering at scale in production.
I sense that there's the combination of much more competition with companies that are able to create these experiences, and just a desire for everything to be personalized has actually been a significant driver of this. The other one is interest rates have been historically low now for a decade, right? So think back to pre the crisis, right? Those fat margins meant that banks didn't really need to do this. And if I think about the pain of trying to get business cases approved, it was difficult. Like you had to, it was hard to make a case when you could not use data and still get massive returns. In an environment where, rates have been really low for a long time, banks have to, make money much more efficiently and drive down cost to income ratios, right? And also measure every single, the marginal benefit from every investment dollar. So in the context of that, investing in data has actually made a lot more sense than it did a while back.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned about the increased competition, the changing customer expectations, because I think that all drives, particularly for such a large global traditional, I guess, in many respects, organization like yours, versus, as you say, the sort of smaller, more nimble, more agile, more digital only competition that's coming into the market, and the fintech that's coming into the market. That drives a need, does it, for a level of flexibility, adaptability, and fast and moving fast into the market? Has that changed sort of how quickly you need to move?
Massively, right? So I think, banks all over the world, ours is no exception, right? We've all adopted variations of, agile, right? So it's been 10 years since that lean startup came out. And over that period, it's become apparent that, we need to change, right? The old 20th century organizational structure of team A handing over to team B in a baton, kind of a relay race with a very waterfall approach, that hasn't worked. And, if we want to compete, if we want to deploy things quickly, we've had to actually evolve and actually adopt a lot of these approaches that the smaller, leaner companies have been using. We've hired a lot of people, right? So there are lots of people who've worked at these sorts of organizations. We've hired them. They come with those skills and that culture. So that's driving quite a big shift in ways of working, to the point where org structures, those hierarchies, they do seem very 20th century. And, here we are 20 years into this century, and it's kind of, it seems an anachronism that we still have those.
Yeah. I mean, is that driving? So we mentioned at the start. So is that driving this need to think about data through that product lens? So we talk a lot with our customers now about data products and move away from what you just talked about there, that kind of traditional project mode, and standing up a project and passing responsibility for different parts of that to different parts of the organization and all that good stuff. Is that something that's been born out of this need to be more agile and adaptive?
It's that is definitely part of it, right? The other part is when we create one of these capabilities, we want it to have a ongoing life, right? So there's a lifetime value associated with what we created, and you need people that are going to continue to iterate and refine and own that particular capability. So that's been a really big shift, Jason. So 5 years ago, I would say we weren't really building any data products. I mean, it was something we talked about, but we didn't really have any examples. It was still in the, well, that's a great idea. And then, kind of over the last 2 or 3 years, made this huge shift where all of a sudden we've got to build various bots or various kind of recommendation engines or various tools that we're exposing to staff, where all of a sudden we built something. We've got to put it into production. We've got to monitor it continuously. It sort of shifted parts of my team from being a data and analytics shop to being, almost like a production IT shop, right? So these are new skills we've had to learn, and how we actually getting those handoffs right between the various production teams. That's been something that is quite new that we've had to really focus on. And just to be really transparent, it's still nascent, right? So, the world that I see is where we are literally building hundreds of these data products and putting them to production, having to monitor these at scale. We're not there yet, but it's very close, right? So we're about 12 months away from that. So that's kind of very exciting. It's been quite a shift in how we think about what we do and our roles and the sorts of people that we need. So that's been incredibly exciting for everyone in the team.
It's I like the lens you have on the data products there, which is of the need for doing it, which is it's not really about creating a thing and sharing it with someone and then leaving to it.
It's an enduring capability.
Exactly right. Enduring capability. It's not, build a dashboard, give it to somebody, they've got the data they need, the insights they need. This is a live, it's almost more like a live application than it is a sort of standalone data item, like sort of it used to be sort of 5-10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, and just on that one, so I've talked about the products that are obviously products, right? So things like a recommendation engine or a bot, which we'd build, and that's clearly a product that we want to, or even some sort of forecasting tool, right? But then we've started to apply the same thinking to some of the more traditional things that we do. So you mentioned dashboards. So 3 years ago, we'd build a dashboard. Here it is, the dashboard's done. Now get on with it, right? What we've started to know is even things like dashboards and visualization, right? What we do is we build it, and we've got a product manager, and that product manager is actually assessing how are people using that dashboard? How do we need to optimize it? Can we actually treat the dashboard the same way that we treat a website or a mobile experience, where effectively we're optimizing it depending on users on a continuous basis and taking things out that don't? So we've even started to apply it to some of the more traditional activities like dashboards, which is super useful in that we are now much better able to meet the needs of our internal customers by doing that.
Building on the idea of data products, my next chat was with Rob Kellaway about the emerging concept of data ops. At the time of recording, Rob was heading up data ops at Legal & General Investment Management to bring more agility and more quality into the data products that they were building. We discussed what data ops is, what it's for, and how it supports building technology solutions and ultimately faster time to value.
Absolutely, Jason. I think it is a bit of a new term that's emerging, in the industry right now. So data ops. What is it? What's it good for? These are really, important points to really cover. I think, naturally when we get, new terms arise, there is a little skepticism which can accompany those terms. So is it actually something brand new? Is it something that's been rebadged? I think, let's maybe start there. I think the reality is, I think certainly in my career, we've seen an awful lot of change in the data engineering space and the data space in general. And data ops is really an opportunity to bring some of those really big, important changes together, under a single banner, and give it a kind of a meaning and give it a focus. So, I would start off by saying that really, it's nothing particularly new in itself, but it is actually a combination of three things. So one is certainly, automation. We can't get away from that. There's a level of automation that we haven't really used inside data and data sciences and engineering for a while. I think secondly, there's the agile agenda. So making change happen through agile practice, as opposed to, traditional SDLC and waterfall approaches. And thirdly is lean manufacturing. So, getting your straight through processing correct, getting your shortest possible distance from left to right, making things efficient. And really, in a nutshell, it's those three things. On top of that, I think there's probably two other elements to it. The first is really a customer focus. So I talk about getting the focus on the right-hand side as being, really important. And typically, what we see is that teams are siloed. Typically in large organizations where, perhaps you're in a testing team or in a development team, you tend to focus on those blocks of code or those releases. As opposed to what you're really trying to do, which is create business value on the right. So I think bringing those three things together helps focus on the right. And critically, when we do build things, we build them to operate, right? We're not just getting past the goalposts and going home having done the job, right? We have to live with what we've built. We have to run it, maintain it. And that's a cost that we need to be really clear on. So that's how I see data ops myself.
Okay, and bringing that to sort of you and your role is or the role of leading data ops more generally, is therefore the role on making sure all that stuff happens in more of a sort of leadership kind of governance type role, or is it more about hands-on, doing automation, implementing change? Where does it sit in the kind of leading versus doing spectrum?
Yeah, it's a really good point, isn't it? And I think at the moment I'm leading a small team of data ops. Both ends of that spectrum that you're talking to. So there's definitely a need to, hands on the detail. What are we actually looking to achieve here? Which tool sets are we using? What data sets are we looking at? What code are we writing to do this? Yeah. And then, inevitably, there's the leadership team to work with and show them the value of doing that work. And really, in the 7 months I've been in role so far, we've had some really notable successes. They may not have been the largest use cases on the planet, but they've been meaningful and valuable, and that's how you start to get change happening and support for what you want to do.
One of the most talked about technologies in recent years is artificial intelligence, or AI. You'd be forgiven for thinking that everything was AI enabled, given how much it's talked about and how many organizations claim it's the basis of their technology platforms. But what is AI, and where are we with it? Is it really used that much? What are its uses, and importantly, what's the impact to the world? In this next clip, I explored those questions with Theo Priestley, the technology, AI, and metaverse strategist, futurist, and author of the book, The Future Starts Now.
There needs to be a maturing of the understanding of what AI is and where we are with it at the moment. And if you are adopting, AI solutions at this point in time, you're an early adopter, and the majority of these projects will fail because of that, because the technology itself isn't as mature as what we are led to believe. So, and not only that, but the maturity of organizations to take advantage of AI and advanced algorithms in this way isn't as mature as where they should be either. And it goes back to my point about the state of companies and organizations and how they treat their data on top of the resources that they actually have to be able to make use of that data as well.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because building AI and algorithms is hard, and as you mentioned, it's not that intelligent yet. It's potentially good at one thing. It might optimize one thing, but it's certainly not a human brain, as you say. Some people lead us to believe, but actually, one of the hardest things is the ability for humans to be prepared and react and respond and pivot around what that capability could deliver, and culturally change to sort of support within an organization. So do you think that that's almost an inhibitor, or do you think AI is going to be so good that it just won't care about humans' ability to react around it? It's just going to get so good that organization, society would just sort of happen to us.
I think it's a bit of both. I think we're going to be learning to live with AI and what it can really do over the next 10 to 20 years. Will mature as fast as the technology will, and we will see some disruption, not only in low level work, for example, but in more higher functioning work and then society. So there are already examples of underwriters, for example, using algorithms to run through a claims process in seconds. Lemonade is a classic example that hit the press a couple of years back, that processed the claim in 3 seconds end to end, rather than sending it to an underwriter. They used an algorithm and they paid the customer almost immediately. There are examples, lawyers and the legal system, of using AI and algorithms to basically find common cases, to find correlation between their current case and cases that have happened in the past and decisions that have been made, to make their defense or their sort of the prosecution sort of more effective. Numbers-based professions like actuarials and accountants, I see some of their work being replaced by algorithms, but certainly augmenting what they do rather than replacing them wholesale. Same with radiologists, for example, that have been using algorithms to help them spot diseases or sort of anomalies on X-rays. I think there will always be certainly a fair amount of human factor involved, and we will evolve with the technology and understand where best to apply it, rather than the sort of doom mongering that we see in reports saying, oh, it's going to replace every job and we're all going to be made redundant, and then we talk about displacement of jobs and having to retrain huge amounts of workforce. Now, this is where I think a lot of the conversation tends to go, in that if we displace jobs, we expect people to still work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day or whatever, and we need to find work for them to do that. Nobody's really starting to talk about, well, if AI is taking away some of the more mundane parts of our lives in terms of work, then why can't we use AI to actually recreate this 4-day week scenario, which people seem to be wanting to adopt? And then it gives people, or humanity, more time to kind of rediscover who we really are as a species. I mean, and I think that's where AI should be leading us, not to make us more efficient at 9 to 5 days a week, but to actually give us more time to be, human beings.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there's a massive philosophical ideal there around, what would if a lot of the things that humans do are automated, are taken away, and it changes society so much, it's sort of what's the point? What's the point of humans? What's the goal? What's the ambition? What's the purpose? But it changes that, because there's so much about go to school, get educated, get a job, try and be successful. But that path changes for humanity in huge ways, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I did a TEDx a couple of years ago, and the basis of that was, would you follow a robot leader? And it was, would you appoint an AI to basically be the leader of a country? And I kind of sort of led people down the line of, down the sort of thought process of, well, if robots are coming to take all our jobs, what are we supposed to do? And that's when we introduce, rather than people spending time, learning coding, for example, and trying to adapt to more higher functioning mundane jobs, we should discover, the humanities again, the sociology, psychology, the creative side of what we used to do and be, and hopefully that would actually lead to almost like a new sort of golden age or renaissance, where the robots are doing the stuff that frankly held us back from achieving more as a species. So if they can do all the mundane jobs, if it can actually process large amounts of data and help us analyze things a lot faster, we could potentially achieve more as human beings, not only from a professional level, but also on a personal and intrinsic level. So I think AI has a much bigger part to play in almost freeing us from this kind of unhealthy or unhealthy work-life balance that we have just now.
Next up is my discussion with Murali Bogavali, who headed up the data platform organization at Tinder. As a digital-first organization, data is in their DNA. So the data platforms and products built for them form the basis of much of the app and customer experience that their customers engage with. We talked about how much they are building data products, how they're doing it, how they're managing the data platform, and the approach they've found that works best for them.
Treating data as a product means bringing bringing product management practices into data solutions. Okay. So that's more around agile methodologies and treating data as a product similar to the regular product that you build, right? So at Tinder, the evolution has been pretty clear on how we are thinking of data as a product. So the way we deal with our consumer teams today is the data teams want to be an enabler and provide a platform to deliver data products, and the consumer teams are then going to be owning these data products, and they're going to be doing analysis on those, doing additional transformations on those, and they own these data assets, if you will, and they take it from there. So the data infra and platform team is just going to be an enabler, and that's how we have evolved in our thinking.
Okay. And you mentioned about sort of agile practices within that and the kind of methods that you use to deliver those sort of data products. Is agile, has it been, so what does that mean in context of data, and is it, is it an evolution of the sort of, I guess we can call it traditional agile now, but the way agile has been done to sort of build out particularly digital products in the past, or is it kind of textbook?
Yeah, so as you said, agile has also evolved along the way. There's a lot of newer versions of agile. There's SAFe and there's few more techniques that people use. Yeah. But I mean, from a data as a product perspective, putting that data product hat on, what we wanted to ensure was if your consumer teams, let's say AI and ML and experimentation and analytics, so these are your consumer teams, right? They have their own needs in terms of data. So your AI and ML teams, they're looking for creating data-powered solutions. And your experimentation and analytics teams, they're looking for data-driven insights. So if they have to deliver these products and insights to their consumers, essentially we are in a B2B2C space, right? If they have to deliver those to their consumers, they are looking for continuous delivery on data products that they are getting from the data infra team or data platform team, right? So what I mean by bringing agile practices is data teams can no longer work on a service-oriented fashion and go with a waterfall approach, if you will.
Yeah.
They have to be more nimble, and they have to churn out more frequent updates to the data products. And they need to iterate along with their consumer teams, right? So that they bring in the feedback loops. And it's not like, hey, I have delivered this table for you and I'm done. It's more like, I have delivered this table for you. What is the feedback? How is the adoption looking like? Can I make any more changes on this? And how is it in turn that you're delivering value to your consumer, right? So that's what the data infra team asks off of these ML engineers and data scientists and analysts, if you will.
Right. So in the model, I think in the model that you're explaining there, and I think, so I understand what you meant by B to C now, is the where you sit and the function that the sort of infra team, I think you're calling it, serves, is to provide kind of almost not finished products, but kind of ingredients that create elements that end up in a finished product, like a model or something that drives something that happens in the app, for example. Is that right?
Exactly.
Are you
Yep.
Are you also building sort of finished goods, end products?
Yeah, so we are creating some finished goods. So the way we think about that, Jason, is sometimes our ML engineers and data scientists and analysts come to us with requirements for data products. And we look at the most common denominator, least common denominator across all of these requests. And we say, we see a pattern here, right? So instead of asking each of these individual teams to build their own transformations on their own, maybe along with the data platform that we are delivering, we'll also include these common metrics so that everybody can use, right?
Yeah.
That's to eliminate redundancy, if you will, and also save time, increase efficiency.
Yeah, reusability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We end this episode looking at the use of technology to support human experience and well-being. With Gusto Canton, a senior data leader at Starbucks who has a passion for people analytics, we discuss this and the use of augmented analytics to support improvement in people's lives. He has an obsession with how technology can be used to free up people's time, the panacea, and therefore give them back time to focus on truly value-adding activities.
I mean, I think data and technology can be used for good, especially on these instances, right? Like, let's give the example of right now we're not talking face to face, right? There is COVID, and even if you were here in Atlanta, Georgia, we were having this discussion virtually. So, technology can be a way for us to create a safe space in the time of COVID. That's one little example. Another example is, I'm sure many of you use some kind of, phone or some kind of device to track, how are you, how many steps you make a day, if you're standing up enough, There are things that we can do to give us nudges to help us put us in the right mental spot to have a great day and do things. Like, I am not a fan, or I was not a fan of using technology personally for me before to exercise, for example. But now I'm starting to use it, and I see, this is reminding me that I need to stand up more. This is reminding me that I need to go and take a walk, So there are ways to use it in that respect. And have you familiar with the Pokemon Go video game phenomenon that happened? Yeah.
I remember,
To me, I mean, I'm very certain Pokemon Go, somebody from the Pokemon Go company can push back on me if that was the case, but I'm very certain they never expected to have an impact on the well-being of people the way they had it.
Yeah.
Because it's a augmented reality game, is very entertaining to have, but that game by itself had more impact on kids, young adults, and people in general who like to play that game in terms of walking outside, which is one of the best things you can do for your mental health. And even the government here in the US tried to do this for many years, and they couldn't achieve the same results, even though they have the whole power of the US government behind them with all this marketing and all this, like the first lady pushing for it. And she was the first one to admit it, like, hey, if this is what it takes for people to go outside and walk, great, let's have it.
Yeah. No, that's great. Is there any examples from within Starbucks or Schneider or Walmart, your previous roles, where you've seen this sort of be effective?
Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about, I had my recent experience with an implementation for augmented analytics in Schneider, right? And we call this project the People Analytics iPortal. And the idea was, how do we enable online workforce so they can make more decisions? And by having this kind of technology, it allows us to free up a lot of their time, because you spend a lot of time in organizations trying to reconcile data, or sometimes create reports, or sometimes you don't, you have all these meetings to ask these questions. And by having the right technology, you can actually have the end user just interact with a portal and ask one question, and then follow up with 70 questions if you like to, to get to the whole answer that you need to have. I think using that kind of technology and analytics and data and AI for the benefit of freeing up their time of humans is one of the best things we can do in organizations. And then that doesn't mean that the human is not going to have a job or it's not going to have the same impact. It's the opposite. Now you can focus as a consultant, or you can be more empathetic. You can work on your leadership. You can focus on your customers. That's what we should be spending our time. We shouldn't be spending our time on repetitive work or things that should be done by algorithms or machines. We should let the algorithm, the machine, do what they do best, and we as humans should do what we do best. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I not thought of it in that way before. The level of frustration, the level of anxiety, the level of long hours, early mornings, late nights to prepare packs and data sets, and manually reconcile things because the system can't. But in reality, the system can if we get that right. There's this story I've told before, actually, about at a previous company. One of the biggest activities we did to drive buy-in for a more advanced agenda for data was remove the finance team basically working Sunday nights and early Monday mornings to get the trading pack ready for the board meeting or the trading meeting on Monday. And when you remove, when you give people's Sunday nights back, you earn some credit, but also they're freed up. It's not as stressful a job, and that is positively impacting on their well-being.
Yeah. And I will tell you, you will be surprised on how much this can make a difference. Like, even for analytics teams, I don't know what has been your experience talking to maybe other analytics leaders, but the analytics teams that I know and the data that I've seen from the industry, because of COVID and because of all this disruption and uncertainty, they're getting more questions. Right. So if you're in an analytics team, you're actually feeling more pressure now that you were feeling perhaps in 2019, because you're getting so many questions. And in some cases, you might be doing 10 hours or even 20 hours extra to what you were doing on a day-to-day. So if I can take all that extra work from you and allow like augmented analytics and AI to take care of that for you, you will feel so much more better. And, in my case, I love what I do. I don't mind doing, presentations or doing research during the weekends, because it is part of my passion. It's my personal DNA, but I like to do it because I love it. I don't want to do it because I have a deadline on Monday for the financial, report or whatever, right?
Discretionary. You want it to be discretionary, not.
Yeah, because I want to be inspired. I want to use my creativity.
Yeah. You can accelerate returns from data at pace and with agility by using the right technology the right way. It's one of the enablers to a successful data strategy, but can equally be an inhibitor if not implemented correctly. The discussions I've highlighted here really help to unpick the mindset and approach required to get the most out of technology and how it can enhance our lives and improve our success with data. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Hub and Spoken special series. I want to thank all our guests in the episodes curated on this edition and all other editions for their contribution to making this podcast so valuable and sharing their stories. I also want to thank our wonderful listeners across 126 countries and counting for listening, feeding back and sharing these episodes with other people to enjoy. We hope you find this series interesting, inspiring and informative, so please do check out the rest of the series.